Imagine if someone told you they were abducted by aliens and got to travel the universe. Would you believe them? Before you answer that, you should be asking, how credible is this person? Do they have a history of making stuff up? Have they never lied to us before? Do I even know this person? But even then, based on the extraordinary nature of the claim, you should demand a higher standard of evidence before believing in the claim. Even if this person never lied to you before, the person can just be mistaken. Lying isn't the only possibility. With the alien abduction story in mind, if you read something on the internet that was not as extraordinary as being taken for a ride around the universe by aliens, but still surprising nonetheless, you want to ask similar questions. How reliable is this source? What evidence do they present to support their claim? Even if you are getting this information from a trusted news source, you want to apply a healthy dose of skepticism, especially to claims that are out of the ordinary. First, some basic information about the media. Whether we're talking about a major network, a publicly funded station, a college newspaper, a lone blogger, or a friend sharing a story on social media, if the information run, posted, or shared is not appreciated by others, that information source will eventually stop sharing that kind of information. We tend to blame the media for much of what they share, yet we are equally responsible by supporting such sources with our subscriptions, donations, views, shares, likes, and comments. If you want to do your part in improving the quality of information available, stop supporting these garbage sources. Yes, even a comment on their site or post expressing your disapproval keeps them in business. This is one case where if we ignore our problems, they will go away. There are two more terms that you need to know: fake news and clickbait. No, fake news is not defined as news you disagree with. Calling a source fake news because they said something you didn't like about your political party is like calling a white couple racist because they gave birth to a white baby. Fake news websites deliberately publish hoaxes, propaganda, and disinformation purporting to be real news. Even if MSNBC or Fox gets a story wrong, it's highly unlikely that such news would qualify as fake news. Fake news websites specialize in fake news. Clickbait is content whose main purpose is to attract attention and encourage visitors to click on a link to a particular web page. Headlines such as, "Does this photo really show," insert good-looking movie star here, "naked on a nude beach?" Then once you click on the link, you discover three things. One, you are bombarded with ads, often to the point where your browser crashes. Two, no, that wasn't a photo of the good-looking movie star nude on the beach. It was actually an old guy in a beige Speedo. And three, you're a sucker. Here's a hint. If you see clickbait headlines in social media and you're really tempted to click on the link, read the comments. There were likely many suckers before you who will share the big reveal with you in the comments. There are many categories of information sources. The ones we are mostly focusing on in this course are online media sources, including major news outlets, websites, blogs, and those who share information via social media. But there are also encyclopedias, academic sources, first-hand accounts, gossip, offline media, and more. To make things even more complicated, there are subcategories of each source. For example, within major news outlets, we can break them down to fact reporting outlets such as Reuters or the Associated Press, or political commentary such as Fox News and MSNBC. And even individual sources can be a mix of fact reporting, commentary, satire, tabloid style, and investigative journalism. The bottom line is, the more you know about what kind of source you're dealing with, as well as how biased the source is, the better prepared you will be to apply an appropriate level of skepticism to the information shared by the source. So how do we apply skepticism when it comes to evaluating the credibility of information? Often, People just like to ramble and don't necessarily have a point, argument, or claim. Sometimes articles or commentary are indirectly making claims under the guise of asking questions. For example, you might see the headline, "Was Obama really born in the US?" If that is all you see, the headline clearly was designed to get clicks as well as spread doubt about Obama's birthplace. The article might continue with a series of questions, not making a single claim or citing a single source. Most sources have biases, political, religious, ideological, or otherwise. What are your favorite sources of information? As objectively as possible, think about the source bias. You can research media bias and see independent reports by nonpartisan, nonprofit groups. Don't fall for the mainstream media is evil narrative that is so often perpetrated by lesser-known sources that desperately want their share of viewers. This is not unlike cult behavior, where cult leaders attempt to discredit people who attempt to call attention to the fact that they are a cult. Instead of telling you to only associate with cult members, these media sources will tell you that you can only trust them, and all other sources should be avoided. Multiple narratives and viewpoints is the path to being a responsible consumer of information. It's not the refusal to hear and consider other viewpoints. A big red flag is raised when an article or source of information is anonymous. Credible news sources have staff journalists who proudly put their names on their work. Like a good source, there are good journalists who can generally be trusted based on their history of work. The problem is when an article, post, video, or other form of information is signed staff or some other generic entity, or not signed at all. There is no one who is being held accountable for the information. And don't be deceived by fake author names. Look the author up. It's not difficult to see if they are a real person or not. A headline might read, "Finally, proof of life after death." What is meant by proof? What is meant by life after death? In this case, proof meant a story by a child, and life after death meant a dreamlike experience while the child's heart stopped but brain activity was still strong. There's a big difference between the two, and very often opinions are sold as facts. If it is actually a fact, does the evidence adequately support the claim? If it is an opinion, has the opinion been adequately supported by facts? Recycled stories tend to make their way around social media when they are more meaningful. For example, if a vote is coming up on gun control, people will find stories from the last decade about kids getting shot accidentally, or hero citizens with a gun that shot the bad guy and saved the day. This gives the false impression that these events are more common than they actually are. If you are going to accept any information, don't stop at the headline. As we have seen, and will see more in the next lesson, headlines are notoriously manipulative, even with the most reputable sources. One great advantage of getting information on the internet is the ability to fact-check in real time. If the information is an article, see if facts are cited or linked. For example, if a science reporter is writing about the outcome of a study, is the study linked to the article? It should be, or at least cited in the references. Be very skeptical of assertions made or supported facts mentioned with no trail leading to the source. When you follow the sources to the original source, what you often find is that you were an unwilling participant in a game of telephone, where the information you have is significantly different from the information in the original source. A recent example is all those articles claiming that a glass of wine is better for you than an hour at the gym. Of course, This was a serious distortion of the conclusion made by the original researchers involved in the study. A good rule of thumb is to simply check multiple sources. Ask yourself, how come the major networks aren't reporting this information? And remember, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. If Bill the blogger claims the government is run by lizard people, and the reason you won't hear about this on the major networks is because the major networks are also run by lizard people, then before accepting such a conspiracy, make sure you have enough evidence to support the conspiracy.